I just read my first Discworld book. G'day to all you lovely people and welcome back to my channel. I'm Kathy and today I wanted to talk about The Colour of Magic, the first book in the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett. I've been reading fantasy since the late 80s, not so much in the last 10 years or so, and I always knew who Terry Pratchett was, but for some reason he didn't appeal to me at that time when I was reading a lot of fantasy. I thought his books were going to be more humour-based, and that's not what I wanted in my fantasy. But recently one of my subscribers, Will, recommended that I read Terry Pratchett, and I thought, you know what, maybe I'll give it a go. So I did. I ended up reading the first book in the Discworld series called The Colour of Magic, and that came out I think in 1983. Now my understanding is that there are over 40 books and they are usually divided into different story arcs. Not knowing much about this universe, I thought it would be safest to start with the very first published book. Please forgive me if I call it The Colour of Money. Apparently I do that all the time without even realising it, only because I remember the film title more than the book for some reason. That's what happens to me with ebooks, I find. I don't know if others find that, but if I have a physical book in my hands, I generally don't get the titles wrong, but it definitely happens with ebooks all the time. Anyway, up to now, I have been giving reviews on authors, fantasy authors that I've read over the years, but today I'm going to do something a little different. I've decided to actually review, or as best I can, the first book in the Discworld series, The Colour of Magic. Keep in mind that I'm very new to reviewing individual books, and I'm sure I'm going to get it wrong. And also keep in mind that this is my very first introduction to Terry Pratchett's books and the Discworld universe. This review is going to be spoiler-free. I don't know what people prefer. Do you prefer reviews with spoilers or without them? Or a combination of both? Personally, I can't stand spoilers. I'm one of these people who will cover her ears or her eyes if there is even a hint of a spoiler in relation to a film or TV show or book or anything really. But not everyone is like me. Perhaps you don't mind spoilers. So do let me know, and you can let me know down in the comments which is your preference. Okay. Let's start off with Terry Pratchett's universe, the Discworld. The Discworld is basically a world which is a disc, which sits on top of 4 giant elephants who are standing on top of a enormous turtle. Just the visual that gave me was astounding. I just love it. I thought it was so imaginative. I've never heard of anything remotely like it. And it's not telling you anything because I think you learned that in the first few pages of the book. And this turtle apparently swims through space. I just love it. Oh, and the edge of the world is called the rim, where people can apparently fall off. And I imagine they fall into space. Who knows? I haven't reached that far yet. So that was a very good introduction to this world, to this strange, bizarre world that seems so out there, so different to any other fantasy I've read. We start off in this city. I cannot remember what it's called. I want to say Ankh-Pork, and I know that's wrong, which seems to be more magical or mystical. We are introduced to the character of Rincewind, who is a failed, cowardly wizard, and Twoflower, an utterly naive tourist who has come to see the sights of this magical world. My understanding is that Twoflower comes from a city that is more reminiscent of our own world. It is economic based, they talk about insurance and things like that. Whereas this city that Twoflower has come to visit has got magical creatures, has got heroes, has got magic itself. Two Flower and Rincewind come to an arrangement where Rincewind will show him this world, show him the sights, in return for the gold that Two Flower will pay him. I should mention the luggage. Yes, keep an eye out for the luggage. Two Flower has luggage. It's actually called the luggage, which is, I don't know how to describe it, almost a character in itself. I think so anyway, which does get them sometimes into a little bit of trouble. It took me a little bit of time to really get into the book. Initially, I wasn't sure if I was going to like this. It just seemed too bizarre, too outside of my comfort zone, if you can call it that, with respect to fantasy novels. Once the pair started on their adventures is really when I was hooked. I needed to know, what were they going to encounter? Who were they going to encounter? Was it going to be something that I recognized or something so bizarre? And frankly, most of it was really bizarre. And that is the greatest charm of the book. This was not a book I could predict. There were perhaps small little predictions that I could make that would come out, but most of this was a constant surprise. And I think it has been a long time since I have been surprised like that by a book, which is why I really enjoyed this. Pacing. I think initially it starts off a little slow, but then it just seems to gain momentum and doesn't stop. It seemed like every time I turned the page, something extraordinary was happening. It is so different from anything else I have read. And yet, it did remind me very much of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, of which I am a very big fan. It has that same kind of humour, absurdist almost humour, which I do enjoy, as long as it is done extremely well. I can be very difficult to please with humour, but I found that Terry Pratchett just hit the right note for me. The magical system seemed complex. I didn't understand it completely, and that's no reflection on Pratchett. Maybe I skimmed through that a little too quickly. Perhaps he fleshes it out better in future books. It sounds interesting anyway, but I really can't even give you an overall sense of the magical system except that it's colourful or colours are involved. Characterizations. My feeling was that other than Rincewind and Two Flower, the two main protagonists, and perhaps the barbarian whose name I can't remember, most other characters were very sketchily drawn. We got an impression of them, but it wasn't a detailed impression, nor was it meant to be, I don't think. Clearly we were meant to care about the two main characters. Do we? I did. I found them hilarious and charming and naive and silly and so adorable in so many ways. So what did I like about the book? The humour. Without doubt. I did not expect it. Generally, I am not a person who laughs while reading many books. In fact, it doesn't happen often at all. And this one surprised me because I found myself laughing out loud quite a lot. I found Rincewind hysterically funny, particularly how he reacted to Two Flower, who seemed oblivious to the danger that lurked around every corner, whereas Rincewind knew exactly what dangers awaited them. My favourite humorous part of the book was between the sword and Rincewind, and that is all I'm going to say. It reminded me a little of Monty Python. It also reminded me of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that kind of dry, droll humour, which I am a big fan of, I must admit. And I would say that out of everything, that was the biggest draw for me. The second was I really enjoyed Pratchett's writing style. He is a clever writer, no doubts about it. There were a few satirical points in relation to insurance or economics, and I have heard that he is very well known for satire, but I didn't think there was that much of it in this particular book, perhaps in future books. I'm also aware that he is well known for puns, but I didn't see that many puns, or maybe I missed them, quite likely. Regardless, I liked his writing style. It was much more sophisticated than a lot of writers without being complex and difficult to understand. It was an easy read and a fast read because so much happens in this book. Another thing I really loved was I could not predict what was going to happen. You do sometimes get to a city and think, oh, I think I've got an idea. And you're usually wrong because Pratchett would turn it on its head and something else entirely would happen. Another thing I really loved about this book is how original it is. This world, I know, is fantastical in nature, and yet it resembles no other. I don't think anyone else has done something like this. Perhaps since, but certainly not back then. I loved how clever it was. I loved how imaginative this world was. Just so many things I loved about it. So that is some of the things that I liked about it. What didn't I like? After reading this book, I felt like I didn't get enough of the Discworld. Pratchett touched on a lot of different cultures and people and creatures, but we only got such small glimpses of them that I felt like it only whetted my appetite for more, and I wanted more. I wanted to delve a bit deeper into, say, a particular culture or a little bit more of the backstory of a creature. But that could be me. I just like a lot of detail in my books to give me a real sense of feeling immersed in this world. I didn't feel like that. I definitely felt like a passenger or an observer rather than a part of the story. And with fantasy, I like to feel immersed in the story. But it's only a minor criticism, if anything. And in conclusion, would I recommend this book? Definitely. Yes, particularly if you like absurdist, slapstick humor, if you like Monty Python or Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I think this would appeal to you greatly. If, however, you prefer fantasy that is more serious, then this one is not for you. I will be reading more in the Discworld series. I'm going to read the second book that was published after The Colour of Magic. As to whether I will be as big a fan of the Discworld series as others, I really don't know. I think I need to read several more before I make up my mind. I do like to score the books I've read. I score between 1 and 10, and I would give this a 5.5. I should mention I am a tough scorer, I know, but hey, if it's over 5, then I will read it again generally. I think there was some things that could have been done better, but as a first book, I think it was really good. I could just see the potential of it becoming even better in the future, which is why I am going to read future books. Let me know if you have read The Colour of Magic and what your thoughts are on it. I'm also curious to hear what people think of the Discworld series in general. Are there certain books which you recommend over others? I didn't know where to start, which is why I started with the very first published book, but I'm quite happy to continue in this order for now anyway. I would love to hear your thoughts on what you thought of this review. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Have you got any other points that I might have missed? And I'm sure I've missed a lot. Thank you guys so very much for hanging out with me. And as usual, you can like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I hope you all have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.